and gentlemen, welcome to the European Masters Road Trip. As always, my name is Rob Ghosty Dreams Price, and joining me still from Shanghai is Oisin BP Malloy. But we've got a very special guest with us here today. It is none other than a man that I worked with several years ago, and I'm delighted to see his face back on the camera. It is Sang, who's going to be joining us to bring us all the information on the Nordic Championships. But Sang, how are you doing? It's been a while.
Yeah, it's definitely been a while, so thank you so much for asking me to join. Yeah, I'm really happy to be talking to you like this on stream again. It feels great. No, but really, it feels great. It's really good, and be joined by all the way from Shanghai in the middle of a typhoon as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, if I cut off randomly, assume that it was the typhoon battering my apartment block right now that I have to deal with. So I do apologize if I do jump off. But Sang, thank you for joining us. Always a pleasure to have someone we used to work with. And, we've known each other haven't seen each other in a long time. We've known each other for a very long time, I suppose. And how have you been?
True.
How's everything Nordic side for you?
Well, Nordic side is actually, I don't know if you can tell on my camera because the lighting is a little bit off, but it's actually beautiful here right now.
Must be nice for some.
There's no typhoons here. No typhoons. We're doing great so far, at least. I mean, global warming is coming, but we're doing well until the ice caps are melting and we're all gonna drown. But until then, it's great. No, I recently rediscovered this new game called Pokemon Go. You ever heard about it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm on the Wizards Unite hype train.
The one summer where world peace looked like it was attainable.
Yeah, kind of. No, but
well.
like where I live, it's on the countryside. It's a little bit what do you call it? Looking for a better word, in a lack of better words, backwards. Is that the word I'm looking for? No, but like, people recently discovered Pokemon Go. Here it's like, look, there's this new game from the Nintendo company, and like Niantic. Anyways, so I've been here with my niece and my nephew, and we're playing a lot of Pokemon Go and enjoying the sun. So everything is great.
Beautiful, beautiful. Now, moving swiftly onwards, of course, we're not here to talk about Pokemon Go, as much as we will probably be able to chat about that for hours on end. We are, of course, here to talk about the Nordic Championships, the Nordic region, its history with the EU Masters, and of course, it's how they're looking right now. So, as of this moment, looking kind of at the Nordic region, Rob, you have casted yourself quite a bit of the regional leagues before they got into the Nordic Championship. Yeah. And, both of you, I want this kind of like, I'll go to you first, Sang. Like, how are you feeling about the Nordic Open or the Nordic scene right now? Is it strong? Is it weak? Are you looking as strong as ever? Where is it at right now? I'll start with you, Sang.
I mean, talking about as strong as ever, it's like a weird thing to say because historically we haven't done that well in the EU Masters, like except for last year when NIP got to second place. So, like, I feel like the Nordic scene have a lot of strong players, right? But we're lacking organizations, we're lacking all of that administration around the teams, we're lacking like good coaches that have played with their teams for a long time. Because like, scratch that, I don't want to say we're lacking good coaches. We have strong coaches, we have strong players, but there's a lot of switch ups, right? So for every single time we're watching the Nordic Championship again, you see the same players on completely different teams for completely different organizations. They bring in some new powerhouses, like for example Godbro is back again in this tournament, and like strong players like that. And then when you watch the games, it's like one step. This is gonna sound like I'm flaming, but it's like only a few steps above the solo queue, right? Because these players only had a couple of weeks to practice with each other. So you have some who played a lot together in different teams. They have that synergy. You have some who are like complete wild cards, and a lot of times you're gonna see a couple of players just snowball and completely win these games from very weird situations, like games that they have a lot of trouble finishing them off. So I feel like, yeah, we're strong as always, but we still have the same weaknesses as we always had.
I think that's kind of the interesting one, is because every time I look at, just the raw talent that comes out from the Nordic regions, like insane junglers, crazy mid laners, like you've been able to produce a serious amount of talent. And even looking like at the top three teams that are there, like Falcon, Final Tribe, Ventus. As you said, like Godbro, Marcoon is another guy. I know he's not from the Nordics, but incredibly strong jungler. And Weiser is an absolute beast in the top lane. You got Royal Canin as well and Chrisberg, who are big carries on the final tribe. Skedden has kind of been a name that's been around for a while when you look towards like top European
Creadan.
junglers. Like it's crazy when you look at it, and then you see it gets to European Master, and you're kind of like, where'd they go? Like that's the
Yeah,
part
I
that always
mean,
confused me.
well, I mean, if you were watching these games, and I don't know if you how many of these games you actually been watching. A lot of times we only have time to watch the stats afterwards, right? And you watch a couple of replays, you see some really like strong play outplays, and like, yeah, this looks really good. But you gotta sometimes remember that it's a very different level between these teams in this Nordic region. So you have like for the past two splits, we've had some powerhouses in the top four, even top five actually, and only a few of the teams that you kind of like will expect to not do that well. They manage to get in on a second seed from their country, and they do so, but that's to be expected, right? But for me, a lot of these plays you see and this strength that you see comes from the individual strength of these pro players. But when they come to the EU Masters and they face off versus these veterans, these teams have been playing together, they have the coaches, they have the organizations behind them, and they've been practicing for this. Meanwhile, your team's been practicing just in general, like you're generally really good players, and that's when they falter. Because if you can't play strategically in League of Legends, you can't play in any higher tier, to be honest.
Yeah, and that.
So as well as that, sorry, Rob, I
Sorry,
was
you're
going
okay.
to say, like, you talk about the players that are currently within the Nordic region, but even historically, if we look towards kind of Nordic representation throughout the world in terms of League of Legends, you've got the likes of Bjergsen, Sven, Jensen, just to
Yeah.
name a few, have gone off to much bigger sides. And it's something that I've kind of noticed that despite the amount of talent that comes out of the Nordic region, the Nordic League itself has never really been a powerhouse. And do you think there's a reason for that? Or do you think these players are just getting caught too young and they never get a chance to prove themselves in these leagues? Or is there something?
I mean, I think I managed to catch all of that entire question. You cut off a little bit at the end, but to answer what I believe was the question, I think it all comes down to a little bit like the Swedish, for Sweden at least, as I can only speak for us, but I think the Nordic region have kind of similar cultures. I think we have a culture where you can, when you're maybe like 16 to 19, 20-ish, you can sort of follow that dream, right? And you can aspire to be a full-time professional League of Legends player. But after a while, after the Swedish gymnasium or like Swedish high school is finished, you're sort of pressured to make a choice where you have to either fully commit or where you have to kind of back out and keep your playing as a hobby more than a profession. And it's a little bit sad because we have a lot of talent. We have the infrastructure that theoretically should be able to support these players to go for their dreams, but we don't. What we don't have is enough of the older generation to understand that this is actually something that is as viable as other career choices that are high risk, high reward, like becoming an actor, becoming a musician, becoming an artist in any way, stuff like that. I mean, or an athlete. We have so many athletes in Sweden that get scholarships, that get all of this the support that they need to stay with it even after they've hit that little wall, I would say, when they become 19, 20, and they still kind of are pressured to get a job and just start looking for real jobs and like pursue your future or whatever that is. So I feel like if we as a culture in the Nordic region would realize that we need to support these players in a similar way that we supported Zlatan, that we supported, all of these. That's actually the only football player I know. But like other professional athletes that we have, then I believe we could absolutely have great organizations. The good news is this actually has started to happen. Like last year, Östersund's FK was a team that did really well, that managed to. They didn't get all the way to, or rather, not last year, last split, I would say. They managed to get top four. They almost got got all the way, or rather, no, wait, sorry, they actually did get all the way. Now this year they've been picked up by Falcon, a lot of those players, and Assistance FK is usually a football team. So these organizations are kind of trying to help these players now and support them a little bit, but we're still a long way from both Norway and Denmark, who are much better at supporting their players, which I think you can tell. Right, when you look at the global League of Legends scene, you see a lot of Danish players able to get a little bit further than the Swedish players, for example, or the Finnish players, where I believe I'm just speculating, but I think the support is even lower in Finland than it is in Sweden for players to just pursue these dreams and try to actually become a professional esporter.
And just kind of going back to that culture, do you think that's why we see so many Nordic players? Like any regional league you look at has at least a couple of Nordic players in it. Do you think it is that kind of a case of, okay, well, if I want to pursue this, I need to go elsewhere to try and look at it? Like, I know Chris Berg has come back. I know Weiser has come back. He was playing and outplayed in Italy, but these are guys that obviously went far afield to try and follow this dream. Is that a case of the pressure they're kind of getting from the culture back home, or is it a case
Yeah.
of you've got so much talent there that it's kind of overflowing into the rest of Europe?
No, I think like you hit the jackpot right there. Like that's the big case for most of the Swedish pro players I've been talking to. I mean, real players who show real promise. They usually goes like to Spain, they go to Italy, they go to Germany, and they pursue the teams there because there's an actual scene there for them to play. Apart from these big regional tournaments like the Nordic Championship over to the EU Masters, I mean, you can't wait all year to play that one tournament, right? You need to keep practicing, you need to stay in the game. So that's what they have to do. And a lot of times they play it online. And it's not absolutely not the same to play online in tournaments with a team as it is to live in a team house, to have your coach available 24/7, to keep talking with your teammates 24/7, and have that kind of practice. I mean, look at any team sport and ask them if they could do what they do if they could only talk to their teammates like 2 hours a day tops. It would never work.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, and I think it is interesting to see though. Just from my perspective, I always every time I go into some sort of league, whether it was when I was casting the UK or in the Baltic leagues or when we were looking at European Masters, it was almost every single region seemed to have some sort of Nordic player that would come out, and it's interesting to see that a region that does just seem to flourish with so much raw talent when it comes to League of Legends, then coming in towards European Masters, what is it that you feel is kind of the tipping points you feel that they might be able to take it to that next step? Is it a case of, you kind of touched on coaching and analysts, but then do you feel that they need a little bit more structure around gaming houses? Do you feel like they need a little bit more structure around the way they practice, or what is it you feel that's missing from the Nordic League of Legends scene?
Well, I think right now we're kind of lacking a little bit of heart, to be honest. Like it sounds a little bit cheesy, but like I'm thinking back to Jamato Cannon, his speech after Worlds, and he, says, like you do you. You gotta play your play style. You gotta do what you do. And I kind of feel like we're lacking that right now in the Nordic region because everyone is just struggling. I feel to find a team or a game house anywhere in the world because you can't find it in Sweden. And when the Nordic Championship comes around, for Sweden at least, most of the players I talked to, they're like, yeah, we kind of scrambled together our friends. We asked who didn't already have a team. It's not like they're getting scouted. It's more like we talk to friends and they put together a team. They find someone who can be a coach and then they practice for maybe 2 or 3 weeks. A lot of times, a lot of players been complaining a little bit because they're like, yeah, we only got the or what do you call it? The sign up for the Nordic Championship only started 3 weeks before the first game, and we needed more time to practice. And that says a lot, right? Like that is a little bit sad that these players only get together for these regional tournaments when it's a regional tournament. Like they never play together, although they have all of this talent gathered at the same place because it's much better for them, much more beneficial for them, or sometimes even necessary to search for teams elsewhere because there are none in Sweden. You have Östersunds FK. Now you have I mean, the Final Tribe has been having some success I mean, Ventus or Atlantis. I mean, they get some going, and then after the tournament, after EU Masters, they disband and then again look for another organization because they just don't have what it takes to stick together and really go for it, to really have this, to make this region flourish again. Or rather, maybe we're lacking sponsors, maybe we're lacking the infrastructure and organization around it to make a Nordic, or rather a Swedish league happen that can compete long term in more than just a Nordic Championship.
Because
And
like
do you think? Sorry, Robert. I do believe our system of checking for
it's not working.
muted mics does
It's
not
not
work.
working.
Unfortunately, Discord is not working. Corey says I'm still muted. But just as you touched on that, and I did really want to get your opinion on one particular thing. Do you think that the current system of which the Nordic Championship operates, of all the different countries from all the different leagues, trying to come together and create this kind of super league, if you like. Do you think that's beneficial or hindering? Because obviously, when I look at the sides of Germany or France or Spain, even Italy to an extent, it's like there's one league for this one country and that's it. You make EU Masters from that. But obviously, when I look towards the Nordic scene, I see there's a regional for Finland, for Norway, for Denmark, for Sweden. Everyone has a regional, and then from that we got this other kind of thing going on, and it's a very messy kind of setup. Do you think that's a good or a bad setup in your opinion?
Well, I don't know. Before I answer that, I gotta mention also that I kind of forgot to mention the Swedish esports league, but as I say that, that kind of ties into your question, right? Like we have all of these like national leagues, we have this big split, and Nordic. Yeah, we're trying to make it all tie together. For me, I think it's a good thing for now. I think it's really good right now because we need something that will make like each and every country kind of realize like, okay, if our neighbors are doing this, we kind of need to be doing this too. Like that's sort of how it works, even at a much smaller scale. Like if a small area in Sweden, let's say Värmdö, for example, or outside of Stockholm, does something, then the next region kind of want to join in and make it happen as well. And that's how we got Östersunds FK, for example. They're not close to Värmdö, but they see what they do. They want to do similar things. Everyone wants to a little bit piece of the cake. So for that, I think like these bigger tournaments, yeah, they're good because they make everyone think, okay, if Denmark is doing it, if Norway is doing it, we gotta do it too. And then we get the Swedish Esports League. And I don't know, actually, I gotta be honest, I don't know that much about the Finnish scene, but I do see these regular players coming back over and over again to the Nordic Championship, and that makes me think that okay, maybe they have a smaller scene, a smaller tournament as well. Same for Iceland, although Iceland is so small, I think they have. I'm not sure if they have enough players to have a national league, to be honest. But no matter what, I think it's good for now. In the future, though, I would like to see these national sort of tournaments flourish a little bit more because when you see more players, when this is spread outside of this what do you I don't know how to explain it, this weird little inner circle that sometimes is esports, and sometimes especially like League of Legends specific esports, not just esports in general, just League of Legends or Overwatch or whatever. When it starts to spread and you see these younger generations come in, all of a sudden you're gonna have a huge potential pool huge pool of potential pro players, and that's when I think we're gonna see. I want to see more of these national leagues instead, to sort of thin the herd and make the Nordic Championship something that is really spectacular, something that you only of chosen few can get into, and then to the EU Masters, and then possibly get scouted and get to the LEC or LCS or wherever in the world you're gonna go. That's sort of what I want for League of Legends. Sadly, I think it's a long way to go still, at least for Sweden.
So do you think having a few more of these tournaments would give, the way you're kind of talking about the teams needing a reason to stay together? Do you think having a few more these national tournaments might have teams stay together, or do you think that because there be like so many of them, they kind of go, look, I'll just sign up for the next one. There's one in 3 weeks' time, and I'll create a team at that point. Do you think that the scene needs more tournaments, or is it just more structure behind the scenes to try and make these teams stay together?
I kind of like want to meme you a little bit and be like, why not both? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
you sort of, yeah, you need to. A lot of people have been asking for the Nordic Championship to have a longer play-in, a longer group stage. But I kind of want to see, like, Swedish Esports League take it a step further, or other esports leagues in Sweden, whichever really want to grab that spot to be the play-in for the Nordic Championship, and have like this big regular season. You want to see this hype around it. For now, they have the season. They don't really have the hype. The Nordic Championship gets so much more hype, and for that, I would like to see the Nordic Championship be extended, have a longer group stage, have time for us to get to know the players much more, to build a narrative around them, almost have, like, almost for now at least, a regular season, just for us to see this level, right? To keep it at this level, and then in the future, when we have more, we have a bigger pool of strong players. Yeah, sure, bring it down to these smaller tournaments at first, have the play-ins, and then we can go from there. But I think like all these are really difficult questions, and in the end, it all comes down to like how much does these organizations want to invest into this scene, and how much does it generate? League of Legends for me is still like my number one game. I still love it, but let's be honest, the audience for League of Legends is getting older, and as you get older, it's much more difficult to find, these young stars. It's really difficult. You need to start it early. You need to start almost when you're 12 years old, and you go from there to become like to become the next Reckless, for example. To become that super player. And right now, like, for good or worse, I feel like there are a lot fewer 12-year-old players in League of Legends on the Rift.
I think that's fair. And I think one of the things that stands out to me, because like when I look at the way the Nordic Champions is based, obviously because you're coming from that national league into the Nordic Championship, every team is very much situated in like this is the Danish team. Here's all the Danish players. Here's all the Norwegian players, and we're going to work with all the Swedish players over on this team. And I think it'd be kind of interesting, especially looking forward to kind of go, what would happen if you just had, say, the Nordic Championship by itself? And the level of players that you'd get if you were just able to create a team from the best from all the different teams. Because, like, I mean, obviously Sweden produces some incredible talent, but like if I'm looking at like Nordavind, Ploxy, amazing jungler. You got Ericsson as well, who looks amazing. Tide is a fantastic AD carry, and I start to look at some of the other teams and thinking if I could like pick and match between all the
Yeah.
different teams, I mean, you would have some serious team going into the European Masters.
I kind of like the like handicap or difficulty of having to like three or at least two players from the same country to represent that country. I kind of like it because it makes it interesting for the viewers to be like rooting for your team. But I do agree with you that to have the restrictions a little bit, or to have a little bit less restrictions, and to be able to get that power team, but then also to have like a longer split to also like make it worth your while, right? To have these organizations sign up, and then you get two Swedish organizations that are actually like, that can back the players up with cash as well, so they can keep playing with it, like NIP, for example. And then you really want to create this big tournament for the Nordic region, and you can as well tune in just to cheer for your country. Maybe you don't even know anything about these players, but you still know that you can cheer for your country or the team or the organization representing that country. That is great. You also get these strong teams that makes it much more interesting to watch, which is also great. The players get paid, and they get this experience that they need. They get the ties with the organizations that they need to make this choice, really, if you want to stay in your region and keep playing like this, or if you want to branch out, you want to go to Spain and join movie star riders like all those Swedish players did before, or whatever you want to do. But at least it's a choice. Right now, I kind of feel like the players don't have that choice when the Nordic Championship is over. Then they're just back to whichever organization, wherever in the world, that wants them.
Yeah, I think it's definitely kind of a curious one to try and look at, especially because I think but a lot of people look towards European Masters as trying to find the best region. And I think when you
Yeah.
start to look towards them, because we had Moonboy on there just earlier on the week talking about Italy, and he's saying that a lot of the Italians have issues with the Italian team sometimes because there isn't a single Italian player on them. And then it's interesting when you come to look at like the Nordic Championships where everyone is so situated. Not only like it's not the Nordics, this is the Danish team or the Swedish team or whatever. And it's kind of cool to see. I think I agree with you where if you could create almost these super teams from the Nordics, I think you would start to see them maybe teams sticking together and seeing what they can do. And then because you've got teams that are putting up results like you see in the Spanish leagues or the French leagues, maybe then you do start to see the money there to try and back that one up.
Yeah, I mean, money is always the issue, really. You need to make these organizations earn that money so they can pay their players so the players stick around, and then you get more followers, you get these actual fans. I mean, look at the Norwegian region, where Celestial Gaming has been around playing in Telenor League for forever. And anytime they get to the Nordic Championship, which they do almost constantly, they sort of end up in the the lower half of the of the standings, but they do it with heart. Like they come back every time. I keep cheering on. I mean, I keep cheering on them because even though I know that they're probably going to lose in the end, I'm always so happy to see them come back and to see that they have fans who get there to cheer them on, even though they know that they're probably not going to do that great. You're a genuine fan. I'm a genuine fan of Celestial Gaming because they stick around. They stick around with the same players, and they as an organization has somehow in Norway made that work. I want to see that in every single region. I want to see that for the Nordic Championship. I want to be able to cheer for Team Atlantis or the Final Tribe when they come back because I know that they maybe swapped out one or two players, but I know it's the same team I fell in love with last season. For now, the Nordic Championship, I mean, you see the Final Tribe and you're like, oh, they're back. And then you see the players and I'm like, didn't they play for every single other team last tournament? So you recognize every single name, but everyone are like, it's a big swinger party, really. Like everyone are on with different partners. You have no idea where anything is going. And that, like, saddens me a little bit. Not to be like completely pro monogamy here, but I mean, they can go poly if they want to, but I kind of feel like I want to see someone just stick around with the same organization. I want to be able to cheer for that organization. The only actual team that's been able to do that is Celestial Gaming, and they keep getting like 9th place or 10th place. Imagine what would happen if you could see that with a team that was able to get to the imagine if Celestial Gaming was able to get all the way to to playoffs just one season. That would be the highlight of my, I want to say life, but that is a little bit overstatement. At least of my summer. That would be a highlight of my summer. And I think, I don't know, maybe people agree with me, maybe people think I'm an idiot. A lot of people do that. It's completely okay. But I don't know. For me, that is something I want to see.
So let's talk about the current teams, the current scope, if you like, of the Nordic Championship, and who are you excited for? Like, regardless of your allegiances, because everyone's biased at some team, that is just a fact of life. Not no caster is ever like 100% unbiased towards anything. But
Like,
in
how
your opinion,
dare
like,
you? How dare you? I'm always completely unbiased. I have never, ever cheered for one team out of personal reasons, although I just admitted that I'm a huge Celestial Gaming fan. But
there
I've
you
never,
go.
I've never.
But that's my point. Like, who's exciting you, be it players or teams? Like, who is kind of, you're looking at them and kind of going, you know what, they're not bad. What is the current scope of the league?
Like, for me, anytime I see Kreisberg in any team, I'm really happy. But the thing that made me the happiest this season was to see that Godbro was back. And Godbro hasn't actually, it's back is a weird way to say it, because last time I saw Godbro was when the Nordic Championship was Ragnarok. So it wasn't even the Nordic Championship. It was Ragnarok. It was completely hosted by Riot Gaming. Now it's DreamHack that is hosting this tournament. But no matter what, it's a Nordic regional big tournament, and Godbro came, I think it was 3 years ago, something like that, and he was just this monster. in mid lane. So to see him back again, I was like, I was like really happy and psyched. At the same time, in a more personal level, I was a little bit like, oh, it's this guy again. Because Godbro, for me, the first time I met Godbro, I've only seen him play. We didn't really, me and Henning didn't know the players' faces that well yet, but we tried to talk to them when we were sharing the same hotel just before the final. So we're at the breakfast, everyone, looking crappy. The players having their the game hoodies on and everything like that, the team hoodies, and we see someone and we're like, yeah, he's on. I think he was on Tricked that year. I can't quite remember. I think he was on Tricked Esports, and we're like, we should say hello to him. So we were like, "Hi, we're the casters," and he was like, "Hi, I'm. Well, you know who I am." And yeah, and without a beat, me and Henning, we were like, "That has got to be God, bro." But not that we knew that it was him because of his face, but because of that introduction, we were like, yeah, this has to be God, bro, because
Well,
he's the guy.
to his defense, if you call yourself God in your
Yeah,
gamer tag,
exactly, right?
you're not exactly going to be humble,
No, and he's got one step above. Now he's God Bro Sama
Yeah.
as well. And for the people who aren't weebs out there, that's like God Bro God, basically. Like God Bro Lord. So he's one step above now. But as a player, he's amazing. And I believe as a person, he's amazing as well. He's probably a great guy. I don't know, maybe he was joking. I have no idea. We were a little bit flustered. We were like, who talks like that? Like, you know who I am. Like, okay, Iron Man. But anyways, we just watching him play back then, he was this mid laner that won any matchup. And he played no matter which meta it was, he could just go whichever champion he had in his pool and he would just outplay his
Echo.
opponents completely. Like Echo,
Yeah.
and like it doesn't matter. Like 100% win rate on Echo, no problem. But back again now. I was expecting to see that in mid lane, and I was casting Ventus Esports versus Final Tribe as the first game in the Nordic Championship. And I was so happy to see that Godbro actually has evolved quite a lot. Now on his team, you will see him play these roaming champions, and in a way, even Echo can definitely, like wants to go to the side lanes, has the strong wave clear, goes to side waves. You see him on champions like Aurelion Sol, you see him on Twisted Faith, you see him on all of these, like Corki, you see him on these roaming champions, and he works with his team, which was his big flaw before when he was known for having, I think, 4 separate accounts in Challenger top 10 at the same time, and he kept holding on to them. So his win rate was like atrocious. It was absolutely sick, disgusting win rate, and he kept holding on to that. And this is the same Godbro that now, with all of that, all of those mechanics that he has, now has taken it to the team play level instead, and is making it work on all of these, like sometimes unorthodox champion picks, just to be able to join his team, to have that low pressure. And that is actually a player for me, a play style that is worthy of being called godlike, even with a Sama suffix at the end. Like, so for me, I really want you to keep looking at Ventus Esports to see that, like with Markoon in the jungle as well, with Restringen in the top lane. They have a strong lineup, they have a strong bot lane, and they have that synergy as a team. The only thing they're lacking right now, at least from what I know, is a coach. I don't know if they don't have any coach or if they're swapping around a little bit or trying something out. If they had a great coach, I believe they would be the uncontested number one. Right now, they're the only team in top 3 that doesn't have a coach. Final Tribe has a coach. Falcon has a coach. Even 2, I believe, 2 coaches. And I think definitely Ventus Esports, with some coaching, with that little bit extra of teamwork, with a good organization that can keep them together, would be a real powerhouse if they're able to get all the way to EU Masters. Well, that's up to playoffs really to decide. Or I don't know if they can. No, they can't even be. They can't be taken out of top 3 anymore. So they're in playoffs definitely, and I'm just looking forward to see some more of them.
I think that was the coolest thing watching Ventus was just you've got Godbro who's an absolute monster in the mid lane, and then because you got Marcoon who's pretty much free to do what he wants to do from the jungle because Godbro's winning mid lane, he would just go in and slap the enemy jungler around and do whatever he wanted in their jungle as well.
Yeah,
So it was awesome to watch that team, and I think yeah, if you start to have a bit of work around there where you've got them working together in tandem because you've got a coach in the background as well, I think that becomes super good then for the team. I think even, but like looking at some of the other mid laners that are there as well, like we already kind of touched on Royal Cannon as well for Final Tribe. I think he's a very strong mid laner, and Darkness was definitely
absolutely.
one as well for Falcon, who I looked at and he was just pulling out this random stuff, and I was like, where in the name of God did this champion come from? And then he just beat people with it. I'm just like, yeah, there's so many amazing mid laners that are coming into the Nordic Championship. And I think they're definitely the probably the lane to watch, possibly besides jungle as well, to keep an eye on for European Masters.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I think Royal Cannon, he's that, powerhouse in the mid lane that can completely snowball his lane and run away with it and just carry the game. But sometimes when he's not able to do that, he can sort of falter because when you're always used like the like old school God bro, like when you're used to winning and when you then you don't kind of know what you will do when you're falling behind. And then you have Darkness in Falcon, who I feel just watching these games or Falcon in general, they like to play for the long games. They play a little bit more scaling, but they're really good at it. So they just play carefully. They go with a semi-aggressive jungler. They go with pretty scaling mid lane, top lane, and bot lane. They play around Hueden a little bit so that they can sort of confuse their opponents, give up maybe one or two objectives, and then they just outscale at 25 to 30 minutes, and then they completely demolish their opponents. Final Tribe and Ventus Esports are both a little bit more snowbally, a little bit more early game. But for me, just looking at players, if you compare Darkness, Royal Cannon, and Godbro, I feel the old Godbro was one where they would go toe to toe with Royal Cannon. The new Godbro sort of like, yeah, okay, I'm just gonna farm. I'm gonna win my lane by farming and by getting platings. And I'm going to win the top lane and the bot lane as well by roaming. And I'm going to allow my jungler to do whatever because if you remember watching the game between Final Tribe and Ventus Esports, anytime Raxi tries to go for an invade or try to steal a camp or anything when Godbro is off the map and he's like, okay, maybe I can make something happen on the opposite side of the map while Godbro is bot lane or whatever, then Godbro just ults. He uses TF for something, he uses Destiny, and then he appears together with Marcoon, and then Raxi is dead. And there's no counterplay around it. The usual counterplay would be that since your opponent in mid lane is rotating so much and is just roaming so much that you would win mid lane with that. But that doesn't happen as well because Godbro is just too good. So that's a big issue, I think, playing versus Ventus Esports and something that you really need to consider how you will play around it. You need to somehow be able to break through these individual lanes before the opponent's mid lane is able to get his roaming abilities up, packages, destinies, whichever ability that he uses. There are a lot of long cooldowns on them nowadays. And you need to somehow play around Marcoon like that. It's really difficult.
So something that I kind of, if we look at more a broader picture of the Nordics rather than the specifics, it's kind of you guys came into the EU Masters 2018 spring. Of course, it was a brand new idea that was kind of still being refined, still is being refined. Still definitely some changes coming in, and you guys did incredibly well, and it was incredibly well for 2018 split. Like, it was a lot of teams like Ninjas and Pajamas were in there. You had a lot of talent that people kind of said, but it's slowly but surely fallen down and down and down to a point where people are starting to question why do we give the Nordic Championship that second seed and play in. And I wanted to get your thoughts on, one of the few things that I think is very interesting is that do you think there is a decline in Nordic, kind of esports quality of the teams you guys are sending? Or do you just think that sometimes the Nordic Championship is just a bit too top heavy with the one team kind of only really being the strongest one, the only one you can really send?
I think for the Nordic Championship, we are I think we're fairly consistent, but we've stagnated a little bit because we don't have that big tournament for these teams to really get to become a team, to be honest, and just not a bunch of like random, really strong players that sort of know each other. And I don't know that much about the other regions, but from what I've come to realize, most of the other regions they have actual tournaments going on. And for the Nordic region, I mean, yeah, we faltered a little bit, but I want to remember everyone. I want to remind everyone again that Ninjas in Pajamas did so well. If it was last split, right, of the EU Masters, or was it? No, actually, no, it wasn't the last split. It was no, it was that 2018. Yeah, so a year ago, the Ninjas in Pajamas did so well in the EU Masters. Like they've done well. We as a region have done really well. Now I feel like every other region have been able to create a system. We have just started the Swedish esports league for Sweden. We have the we have a Danish esports league. We have a Norwegian esports league, and I feel like the Nordic region is going to start to ever so slowly evolve and like break through this little bit of a brick wall that we've hit and come out much stronger than before. Because as I said at the beginning of this podcast, of this cast, I was like, imagine all of these individual players with all of the talent that we have, that they actually start playing regularly together and they start to get these organizations, they get the recognition that they deserve, and then they get into EU Masters. And they have these coaches, they have the organizations, they have this pay that allows you to not stress about the rest of your life while you're trying to become one of the best in Europe. And that's when I think you're going to see you're going to see some magic happen from the Nordic scene. That's all I'm going to say.
So when do you think that time will kind of come? Like, do you think it's, this year? Do you think it's within the next 2 years? Is it a 5 year down the line pipeline? Like, when do you see this becoming the Nordic Championship is considered one of, if not the powerhouse for Europe?
For me right now, I don't know. It's gonna to become the powerhouse of Europe. It's gonna take quite a long time, I believe, still, because our players keep running away to other regions. Every time we have these amazing players, they eventually or almost instantly after EU Masters, after they've proven themselves individually, they find their way to another organization like somewhere else in Europe, and then they become the movie star writers, for example, and they play for Spain, and they do so well. Like with a complete Swedish team for a completely different country, and it just, yeah, sure, go ahead, but it's our fault. I can't blame them. I can't blame them at all. But I would say since we recently started the Swedish esports league, I would say that next year it's going to look different, at least coming from Sweden. I think Denmark has already shown themselves many times over that they already have these organizations, they already have these really strong teams. To take it to the next level, to get to EU Masters and play on that stage and get all the way, not just survive group stage, but to be able to dominate that. I'm going to say, it's like you're putting me on the spot here because it's really difficult to say a year, right?
Yeah.
Like how many years is it going to take? I don't know. Like how many years did it take for me to grow into an adult? I'm still growing. I still have no idea. But I'm just gonna go out on a whim here and say 2 years, and that's a Caster Sang promise. In 2 years, we're going to have
Sealed and stamped, just boop, done.
Swedish powerhouse teams going to happen in 2 years. And you can quote me on that because no one never trusts anything I say, anyways. So it's okay.
It's the
It's
curse
okay.
of play-by-plays, man. I know.
Exactly.
I get exactly where you're coming from. No one trusts what you say. It's like, you're not a color caster. Get out of here. Yeah, now.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I am the play-by-play. It's my job to hype everything. So if Henning was here, I would be like 2 years, and Henning would be like, yeah, let's just say it happens when it happens. Let's just go with a reasonable answer. But he's not here because I'm in my house, and he's nowhere close to here, and I'm going to say 2 years.
We'll have to come back to you now with a clip in 2 years' time.
Please don't do that. I'm gonna be like, no, don't listen to 2-year-old Sai. Like, don't listen to 2 year Sai. He's an idiot. Don't listen to him. Listen to me instead.
I'm an adult now. I don't need to talk.
Exactly. Exactly. Now I'm an adult, and I know not to just throw out.
You can
weird
add another
assumptions.
2 years.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've obviously talked about, a lot of the players who we're excited for, a lot of the teams who we're excited for. And I've got one last question. I do this at the end of every single podcast, and then Rob can ask any follow-up questions if he so desires. My question is, what two teams are representing the Nordics at EU Masters Summer? Only two
Uh,
teams. So many people go, "Oh, two of these four teams are going to do it." I'm like, "No, give
no,
me.
no, I'm
You
just
can
gonna
give
give you.
arguments, but
No, I'm gonna give it to you straight, and this it actually saddens me a little bit, but it's definitely going to be, for me at least, I'm definitely sure it's going to be Ventus Esports and the Final Tribe. Ventus
all
Esports
right.
and the Final Tribe. For me right now, Copenhagen Flames, they've not been doing that well. They right now might be able to make it a little bit into like top four, I believe. I mean, they're tied with Dusty and MG Esports right now, but I think Copenhagen Flames still have just that little bit extra. But in the top, only having lost one game each, we have Falcon, Final Tribe, and Ventus Esports. And looking at the players, I think, or rather looking at these teams and how they've been playing in this tournament so far, I really think it's Ventus Esports and Final Try, because Falcon are doing well, but they're playing this play style, I think, that has its kryptonite will be the Final Tribe and Ventus Esports. That will be its kryptonite. As long as Ventus Esports realize that this is what they are, and they don't try to adapt their play style like in a weird way to try to counteract or like to play a similar style to Falcon or whichever. As long as they just stick to their respective styles and they stay true to their strengths, I think that what they have is just that slight step above Falcon, which makes me a little bit sad because I would like to see Falcon go all the way. Like I said, they're like consisted quite a bit of the Östersunds FK, which is a team that I really like because I like to see these like traditional meaty sports like fuse with the esports and create this unholy duality of traditional sports and esports. That is something that's my dream for the future. So I'm really rooting for Falcon, but I don't think they're quite there just yet.
Okay, and a follow-up question before I leave it up. I've also asked this of pretty much every single one of our guests. What is a successful EU Masters campaign
Stole my
for
question.
a? Yeah, I know, right? I was gonna say, I was like, I always ask this question. So what in your mind? What would you see as a successful one? What would you see as a disappointing run?
um, to be honest, like, yeah, I know I sound a little bit like I love to brag about how strong we are in the Nordic region and yada yada, 2 years, whatever. To be honest, right now, I will be very happy as long as we can make it to top four. I would consider that a definite success for whichever of our teams that make it there. That will definitely be a success for me. I mean, I would like to say like we don't accept anything but the number one spot, but to be honest, like just looking back at our previous seasons and how that has gone, I think top four, that would be super happy. If either of our team can't make it out of group stage, then like that would for me would be so disappointing. That would be me saying that I kind of start to agree with all of these naysayers that don't believe in us, because I definitely believe that our teams have what it takes to get out of group stage to get to top four. Anything under that is for me, yeah, definitely disappointing.
All right, that's me. Good, Rob. If you have any other questions, he's all yours. But that's all I wanted to know.
The other thing I was kind of wondering was, I mean, we kind of touched on, you've got super strong mid laners, you've got incredibly strong junglers, but what is it you
And bot
think?
lanes, we have everything.
Yeah, but it's more, what do you see is like you kind of talked about kryptonite. What do you think is the Nordic being the kryptonite for other regions? What do you think is that something special that the Nordics have that other regions just can't do quite as well, and that will put you into that top four spot?
Hmm. I will say this, that our players have played for a very long time together in pairs or sometimes in trios. And when you get that trio going with for example, if you look at Wazer, Raxine, Royal Cannon, CRISPR, Collide. I mean, CRISPR, Collide, really strong bot lane. Look at Wazer, Raxine, Royal Cannon playing together for at least, I think, a year
Hmm.
now, at least, together. So they have that synergy. I believe. And if you can start to play around, this is something that Henning always keeps shouting at the stream or at the camera anytime we're casting, like play to your strengths, please. But you need to realize this. This is, I believe, at least something that we're quite good at in the north. That we kind of realize our strengths and weaknesses, and if the final tribe of Ventus Esports, if they are able to, as I hope, get all the way to EU Masters, and they realize that we have this strong trio, right? We have this bot lane that is able to just farm and play very consistent, and we can just make the snowball happen in mid lane for Royal Cannon. You can play around that. We play around this very consistent top lane as well, and we focus on this. Then I think that this is something that it's it's nothing that will throw any other team because this is something that everyone does, but I think we do it really well. We have that synergy. The problem is when the games go on a little bit too long and you get to that pinpoint synergy you need to have for the late game where any individual mistake will cost you the game. And that's when I think having a team that hasn't played that long, everyone, all 5 players together, that it becomes very difficult. What's good for us is that this Swedish team, Final Tribe and Ventus Esports from Denmark, they like to go for the early game. So if they can just completely overwhelm their opponents with the early game power and sort of surprise them with how strong they are individually, I think that will take them very far. I don't think it's enough to take them all the way because eventually everyone is going to know what you're doing. They're going to play much slower and they're going to know that we're just going to make you choke at the late game. And that's what I'm hoping for our teams to be able to do at first, at least, just completely overwhelm their opponents and hopefully get far enough before anyone realizes what's happening. And at that point, just hopefully they've been able to grow as a team just through the tournament to become a strong enough team to be able to handle those late game rotations and transactions that can be so difficult and so detrimental if you make a slight mistake.
Well, with planes kicking off in less than a month, we'll have to see if that is going to be the case for European Masters. But Sang, that's everything for today. Thank you very, very much for joining us. We really appreciate you bringing us up to date on the Nordic Championship and looking forward to seeing who will represent that region in the upcoming European Masters. And also thank you for all the viewers at home for tuning in today. Again, I've been Ghostly Dreams. We've had BP, Cass, and Sang, who you can follow at it's over that way. Yes. No, wait, no, that way. You can follow him on his Twitter as well. Thank you very much for everyone, and we hope you have a great evening.